It's good to be here this evening. During my past 42 years here at the university, the IHM Seminary, I had the privilege on many occasions to preside at the Eucharist, many occasions to concelebrate at the Eucharist. Many times I had the opportunity, the privilege to have a free meal, breakfast and evening. But this is my first opportunity, my first privilege to preside at a Rector's conference, historic occasion. This evening I would like to share with you some thoughts about a very dear friend that I was introduced to 55 years ago. A very dear friend who down through these 55 years has helped me so much on many occasions, has greatly helped me in so many ways, and I'd like to just briefly list at least 9 or 10 of those ways in which this very special friend helped me. This very special friend helped me during my years of Dominican formation. This very special friend helped me in my years of studying for the priesthood. This very special friend helped me greatly during my almost 50 years of priestly ministry since I was ordained. This very special friend helped me greatly to become relatively successful in my teaching career. This very special friend helped me greatly to become relatively successful in my preaching, helped me become very successful, I shouldn't say successful, relatively successful in my counseling down through these 55 years, helped me very greatly to become relatively successful as a confessor. This very special friend helped me to become much more deeply appreciative of the good book, the sacred scriptures. And this very special friend helped me very greatly to become more appreciative of this fascinating book of nature, which you all have heard, with those 6 fascinating chapters. I would like to call upon one of you to help me to tell me what those 6 fascinating chapters are all about. Anyone want to volunteer? Yes. Chapter 1.
Minerals?
The fascinating beings called minerals. Diamonds and flotsam. Chapter 2.
Plants.
Fascinating beings called plants. Even the man-eating plants. Chapter 3.
Animals.
Fascinating animals. Lions, tigers, and otherwise. Even rats. Chapter 4.
Humans.
We humans. Homo sapiens. Sometimes Homo stupidus. Then chapter 5.
The souls of deceased humans.
The fascinating souls that were once embodied are now disembodied. It's good to think about it because some days we're going to be among them. And then chapter 6.
Spirits of goodwill and of bad will. Angels and demons.
Spirits who never had a body of their own, some of good will, some of evil will, and the good wills are the angels, and the evil will are the devils. Further, this very special friend of mine helped me to pick up a very deep appreciation of the author of the book of nature, God, as the author of nature was revealed in nature. More than likely, by this time, some of you have figured out who this very special friend of mine is to whom I referred. He's been so good to me for the last 55 years. Lenny, have you guessed who it might be? Who?
He's also my friend. His name is Jesus Christ.
No, he's a real good friend of mine. But that's not the one I'm referring to. Some of you may have thought it would be Aristotle, who was a great friend of mine. Some of you perhaps thought it was my friend St. Thomas Aquinas. No, it's not. A great friend. Some of you may have thought it was my great friend John Paul II. It's not the one I'm referring to. But who am I referring to? My dear friend, Mademoiselle Philosophy. Sometimes I refer to it as Madame Philosophy. Sometimes simply my Lady Philosophy. Philosophy whom the great philosopher Boethius, of whom you heard, had written so eloquently while he was in prison on false charges. He had all kind of books, labyrinth of books, but they took all of his books away from him. And he says, here I am, with all this time on my hand, ready to be put to death, more than likely. And so he wrote his famous book, The Consolation of Philosophy. A book well worth reading. How many have had the opportunity to read this very fascinating book, Consolation of Philosophy? Did it give you consolation?
Yes.
It's well worth reading. I have to say that when I first met this dear friend of mine, 55 years ago, I was somewhat afraid of her. She sort of terrified me, as a matter of fact. More than likely she's terrified some of you. And one of the reasons I was afraid of her is because my first year of studying philosophy, our texts were in Latin. The lectures were in Latin. The quizzes were in Latin. The exams were in Latin. And I wasn't that well versed in Latin at the time. I have here with me this excellent book, Consolation of Philosophy here. It's a tiny book, but it's filled with all kind of diamonds. So if you haven't read it, I would suggest that you read it. It may be a real consolation to you, especially in your moments of depression, when you're studying so much philosophy. But the other book, I brought with me the 2 volumes written in Latin that I had 55 years ago. I'm going to leave these with you to give you an opportunity just to page through what I had to go through, not knowing too much Latin at the time. But I did survive it since I'm here tonight. But I'll leave these with you, and as I say, maybe a good idea for you to just browse through these, but I want these back. It's part of my heart. In these two volumes, I was first introduced to philosophy. I had my logic in Latin. The first volume also deals with the philosophy of nature, the book of nature I'm talking about, philosophy of the human person. And the second volume deals with my dear friend metaphysics. General metaphysics, special metaphysics. And then the last part of the book deals with general ethics and special ethics. It's all there. This was my introduction to my dear friend, modern philosophy. So as I say, I'll leave these with you, but don't run off with them. And it might be a good test to see how much Latin you've already picked up. I might ask some of you about it later on. Okay. After that first year of philosophy, when I was more or less terrified, I had a big change in my life. I went from being fearful of philosophy to falling in love with philosophy. Can you believe it? And I have to admit that philosophy never has been, nor ever will be, my first and only love. I've had many other loves. But philosophy has been high on the list of my loves, and philosophy has greatly helped me to strengthen and to perfect my other loves, such as my love of teaching, my love of preaching, my love of counseling, my love of hearing confessions, my love of reading the scriptures, my love of reading the book of nature. Philosophy has greatly helped me in these regards. The problem I had in trying to prepare my remarks this evening is that I have 55 years of time to go down through. You see. What am I going to say to them? You see. Well, there's a lot to be said, and as I reflected on these 55 years of my relationship with philosophy, I said, what can I say? What can I say to them? Well, I would say that these 55 years of relationship were very happy years, very successful years, very satisfying years, very gratifying years, and very helpful years. And as I was reflecting upon my own relationship with philosophy after 55 years, thought came to me, what sort of a relationship do these seminarians have at this present time? Some beginning, some in the middle of their relationship here at SMU, and some about to bid us farewell. And I thought within myself, I says, it's my desire and my hope and prayer that you all would give my friend philosophy a chance to do for you what it did for me. It's my hope and desire that you would not permit yourself to be afraid of philosophy, but rather permit yourself to fall in love with philosophy. Certainly, I don't intend to say that philosophy should be the one and only love in your life. But it's my opinion that philosophy should be high on the list of your loves. It can do for you what it did for me. And it was a lot. As I look at the list of the many things I would want to say this evening, I don't have that much time, but I would like to speak of the difference that I found down through the years, and the important difference between doing the history of philosophy and doing philosophy, and the importance of doing both well. History of philosophy is simply a matter of reflecting on the reflections of those great philosophers who have preceded us, therefore reflections on the book of nature in its fascinating chapters. Their reflections. They recorded them for us, and for the purpose of helping us to really actually do philosophy. Many people, down through the years of studies, really don't know what philosophy is all about. They know history of philosophy, but they haven't had much experience in actually philosophizing. And the purpose of studying the history of philosophy is to enable you to really get involved in the actual matter of philosophy. And you know, the philosophy is what? A search for an in-depth, overall, integrated view of reality. You're at the top of the heap in the book of nature. You look down, there are the animals, there are the plants, there are the minerals, and you're at the top of the heap, when you reflect. But when you look up, you're sort of a peon in terms of the spirit beings. We sort of, when you put yourself in that particular situation, actually reflecting upon the book of nature in itself is a tremendously satisfying experience. And it's an important experience. And as Mr. Hofer would say, he took some people up to Garvin Heights to show them Winona. There's 3rd Street approach to life, Highway 61, 2nd Street. But when you get up there, it's a different experience. So if you have the philosophical view, the in-depth, overall, integrated view is sort of breathtaking. And sad to say, but happy to say, from one point of view, Aristotle said you're going to have to wait until you're about 45 or 50 to have the real metaphysical experience. But it's an experience well worth waiting for. Well worth waiting for. Then I want to talk about the philosophy a bit more. I said it's such a satisfying experience. I've had classmates who said they hated philosophy. I said, if I ever had to teach philosophy, I'd leave the Dominican order. Well, the point was that they never really knew the difference between history of philosophy and never really philosophized. But once you have the experience, you don't want to go back just to knowing what the history is, what others said. You have to have the experience yourself. Okay, then I want to shift a bit here and speak about the importance of philosophy, philosophizing. It's going to help you to be successful in your life and help you to be successful in helping others to be successful in their life. And that's what you're all about if you go on to the priesthood. And if you don't go on, all that you learn, you can use. We need solid Catholic laymen. We need those who are involved in the ministerial priesthood. But if you really throw yourself into philosophy, then it will really help you to be successful in whatever aspect of life you're going to end up in. The next thing I want to briefly reflect upon is the big difference between doing pure philosophy and doing Christian philosophy. Some people say there was no such thing as Christian philosophy, and I understand what they're talking about. Just like there's no such thing as Christian physics, chemistry, biology. It's only Christians who are doing physics, chemistry, biology. But then you have Christians who are doing philosophy, and you have non-Christians who are doing philosophy. They all have the book of nature to reflect upon. But the advantage of the Christian doing philosophy, like St. Augustine, St. Thomas Aquinas, Blessed Duns Scotus, they not only had reflected with the human mind, but the human mind aided by the supernatural light and power of divine faith. Whereas our buddy boys, Aristotle, Socrates, Plato, as far as we know, they didn't have divine faith. All that they had is the natural light and power of the human mind. So we refer to Augustine and Aquinas. They said they were philosophers, theologians. Huh? Now it's very difficult for you to appreciate someone who has not had the faith, huh? And reflecting upon the book. But if you have the faith, huh? You have that additional light and power. That's if you use it. And Aquinas mentioned that he learned so much from reading the book of nature personally. He learned so much from reading the books of others who have reflected upon the books of nature. But he said, in the final analysis, he said, I learned far more during my silent moments of prayer at the foot of the cross, and the master teacher teaching me what I need to know. To all the stuff that he had written, his experience, and his Summa Theologica, those of you who are already familiar with it, he says, in terms of the way it really is, this is just like so much straw. But when they say it's high-powered straw, I'd like to have a bit more of it. High-powered straw. It was, in terms of the real insights, because we take things apart, and the human mind just gets so much. But the human mind, enlightened by the supernatural light and power of divine faith, is going to give you a completely different vision. All right. The other thing that let me look at my list here. I can go on all night, but we're going to make a limit here. I want to talk to you about the reputation of our SMU philosophy program. I was chairman of the philosophy department for 25 years, and I received all kind of reactions from the rectors and the teachers, the professors of the seminaries, theology seminaries in this country. Mundelein, St. Paul Seminary, Philadelphia Seminary in Philadelphia, the various seminaries to which our students go in this country. They say that the IHM graduates they found to be well prepared and among the best prepared for doing theology. And our international friends at the Angelicum, the University of St. Thomas Aquinas, and our friends, the Jesuit friends, at the Gregorian, again, they also, during my 25 years, I haven't been chair for some years now, they've indicated that the IHM students whom they had were very well prepared in their philosophical background to do theology, and they were among the best prepared. So that should give you some comfort to know that you're in a very high-class neighborhood. The next point I would like to talk about is our culminating course in philosophy here at SMU. And you know it's called metaphysics. And I have here pages here that I'll give to you for your consideration. People have been after me to write a book. I said, well, I prefer to teach by way of the spoken word. I said, when I retire, I will perhaps put something down in writing. But as I say, that when's retirement going to come? So I thought about it this summer, and I said, well, I'll try my hand at, I love the computer. If it was a regular typewriter, I would have never done this. But to put into print some of the thoughts that I have had. And so I did the first draft of my book. It may never be published, but I'll share it in some ways. It's called An Overview of Aristotelian Thomistic Metaphysics in Question and Answer Form, ATM. And that's not for that bank stuff. And I'll give you a copy of this to take a look at. But I'll just briefly describe this course. Everyone has to take this course before you graduate. It's the culminating experience in our philosophy program. Here in the preface I say, this book has been prepared to help students of philosophy come to a deeper appreciation of the splendor of truth. This book is dedicated to the philosophy majors and minors at Immaculate Heart of Mary Seminary and at St. Mary's University of Minnesota, Winona, Minnesota, 2005. And I have at the bottom here a quote from Epicurus, a letter that he had written to one of his friends. And this quote goes as such: "Let youth not hesitate to philosophize, nor old age get tired of philosophy." It's speaking to me. "For it is suitable for any period of life, and there is no age which is unfit for sanity of mind." How true. Philosophy will keep you sane if it doesn't drive you insane. The table of contents I've given you here, so you can peruse this, but I'll just quickly run through it. And this will be something that you'll run into when you take your metaphysics course. The introduction I hear is simply the meaning of the Aristotelian Thomistic approach to metaphysics. We don't simply give Aristotelian Thomistic metaphysics here. It's Aristotelian Thomistic metaphysics in itself, and then in comparison, in contrast with other approaches to metaphysics, ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary. We go across the board. But given the Aristotelian Thomistic approach to metaphysics in itself here, so the meaning of Aristotelian Thomistic approach to metaphysics, the four parts of the complete Aristotelian Thomistic approach to metaphysics, the nominal definition of metaphysics, the descriptive definition of metaphysics, the importance of metaphysics. And I have the last page of this, I have 7 principal reasons that I've come up with why of the importance of doing metaphysics. Comment briefly on this. But then to go into, when I took metaphysics has 4 parts to it. First of all, there was this first part of metaphysics deals with being in general, period. Second part dealt with being as it exists in the human mind, your epistemology course. Being as finite, being as composed of potency and act, substance and accident, essence and existence, and being as cause, internally, material cause, formal cause, efficient cause, and final cause. But in that general metaphysics, we deal with the nature of being, the principal kinds of being, the analogy of being, the principal properties of being, the one, the true, the good, and the beautiful. Everything is beautiful, each in its own way, right? Remember that song? Have you ever heard of it? You haven't? I know you missed something. All right, the general metaphysics and being as known by the human mind, that's one of the most needed courses. And I don't know how we just put that course in this year, a new one. But it used to be traditionally a part of metaphysics. So, but they broke us down into different courses. So when I took it, we had 4 different courses. But now they have it, but it was a part of the general metaphysics. The 4th part of the metaphysics, being as infinite, namely God, as revealed in nature. And in this part of the course, we go into detail on the existence of God, God's existence as knowable in nature, the essence of God, the attributes of God, and different types of attributes, entitative attributes, operative, and the operations of God outside of himself. So, you freshmen, those who are beginning, you have something to look forward to. But you have to go through some blood, sweat, and tears reasoning before you're going to be able to appreciate all of this, but it can be appreciated. And so I just simply will leave this with you so that you can peruse this and see that there's much more coming up, well worth waiting for. And I'll conclude here with just commenting on the very important of metaphysics. I gave these to Father Michael Hefner, Vicar General, as we were driving out some kind of a meeting. He said, "What do you think of this?" Because he loves metaphysics. I had him in class here many years ago, and he really did have people up. So I lived with him at the cathedral, and Father Sauer's there, and then we had a few other people living there, and I would give them the metaphysics test before I give them to the regular students. And I would test them out, you see, not only metaphysics, but all the others. See how well they can do. But they did pretty well. But some are still a bit intimidated. I asked Father, I was going to ask Father Steffes and Father Bierman, Father Heiding, would you like to take all these exams? I didn't ask them that, but I'm sure that Father Bierman would pass all of them with flying colors. So Father Steffes too. Driving along with Father Steffes, there were some trips, I would go through some of this with him to see how he could respond. So, whoa. I thought we were going to have crashes a couple of times. I said, keep your eyes on the road. It's easy to become abstracted from reality when you're doing metaphysics. You're transcending the here and now, you see. We're time-space creatures with a timeless, spaceless destiny. So of these 7 reasons for doing metaphysics, your culminating experience, study of metaphysics is important because it can help one wisely deal with the mysteries of life. Those mysteries that can be resolved by the natural light and power of the human mind, as well as those mysteries that cannot be resolved by the natural power and light of the human mind, those mysteries with which we human beings must just learn to live with. Don't think you're ever going to solve it all. Your investigation has just begun. When you get to the beatific vision, then you'll see it all. You wonder, see, And when you see Aquinas and Descartes and Locke and Berkeley, if they're there, how did you ever arrive at that conclusion? This will all have to be resolved in the beatific vision somehow. Even those within the Christians, the Dominicans and Franciscans and the Jesuits. That's going to have to be resolved somewhere. But it will. And you know who's going to come out on top? Grace prevails where nature fails. All right, number 2. The study of metaphysics is important because it can help one attain a more perfect appreciation of oneself as a person. The appreciation to which Socrates was referring when he said, "Know thyself is the key to successful living." Those who do not know metaphysics aren't going to get into that Socratic approach. They'll be surfers. Important knowledge, but I'm afraid to do some deep sea diving, high sky diving in the realm of being. You have to be ready and willing to go down below and up above. 3. The study of metaphysics is important because it can help one properly deal with the various conflicting answers to the fundamental question which we human persons as time-space creatures naturally began to ask ourselves when we were children, and which we will naturally continue to ask ourselves until we come to the end of our time-space journey. And the big question is, why? It's a question that I hear people who are on their deathbed ask me, but why? I said, I don't know. You better ask him when you see him. Well, I'm sure he's going to have a good answer. Or he may say to you, why do you want to know why? Just go along with it. Curiosity has killed many a cool cat. There's such a thing as a healthy curiosity. 4. The study of metaphysics is important because it can help one become properly and strongly grounded in one's moral life. And that's what Pope John Paul II tried to do, to bring ethics and metaphysics back together again. It was separated. And that's why you ended up with all this extreme relativity. There are no absolutes. That was his great attempt. The study of metaphysics is important because it renders secure the foundations of all of the physical and mathematical sciences. They think that they're at the top of the heap, but they're not. Our scientists over here, great knowledge, great achievement. Mathematicians, they're next on the ladder. But who's at the top of the ladder? Metaphysics. Study of being as being. But metaphysics, philosophy has something to say to the scientists. Philosophy of science, philosophy of art, philosophy of history. So you philosophers think you know it all. No, we don't know it all. It's just our job to tell you what to do. If you're in the control tower, if you're in Garvin Heights, you can tell the people on 3rd Street what they should be doing. Highway 61, hey, move around, you're going to have to crash. So you're in a position to tell them. Because philosophy, as you know, is search for the intrinsic and extrinsic causes of all beings, using the natural light and power of the human mind. The realm of the philosopher is all beings, not just some beings. All beings. All right, and we've taken care of the scientists and the mathematicians here, and the artists, philosophy of art. You have to tell them what to do. That doesn't mean we know it all. The study of metaphysics is important because it can safeguard one from falling into the, quote, destructive pit of absolute moral relativity, into which pit so many members of our human family have fallen down through the centuries, including our present 21st century. We have many that are in the pit of relativity, extreme relativity. And who's going to save us from that pit of relativity? God, through us metaphysicians. As if metaphysics, in the true sense of metaphysics, is accepted. There are different approaches to metaphysics. That's why I say when we hear at St. Mary's teach metaphysics, it's not simply Aristotelian Thomistic. Thomas taking off on Aristotle. Thomas listened to Augustine, all these other people, so put them together. But you have to see it in comparison and contrast with the ancients. Some of them were rather weirdos. The medieval people. The moderns, some weirdos there, according to my students. How weird can they be? And then the contemporary, we have all kinds of views. They're not well grounded. And finally, the number 7 that I have in this first draft of my book, which may never be published, but it'll go to the grave with me. I'll put it in my casket. Keep me warm. The study of metaphysics is important because it can help one acquire a deeper appreciation of the infinite being, God, the ground and the goal of our being. A deeper appreciation which is necessary if we are successfully to attain our timeless and spaceless destiny and enjoy forever life with God, the timeless and the spaceless one. So, in conclusion, I would suggest and encourage all of you to let philosophy, my dear friend Madame Philosophy, Mademoiselle, whatever you want to call her, or Lady Philosophy, to do for you what it has done for me. Take advantage of the great opportunities you have here. We have an excellent program. It's not perfect, but it's excellent. And if you do find deficiencies in our program, we're always open to suggestions, but you have to know what you're talking about before you make. We listen, and I suggest. When I was chair of the philosophy department, used to be chairman, then it went to chairperson, but now it's down to chair. How impersonalized can they become? So I would say, well, this is our program. When seniors are graduating, I'll say, what are the strengths, what are the weaknesses of our program? What would you like to see? I said, well, no, the stuff that you would like to see, do you think it's really what you want to be? Huh? Well, we listen. But that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to accept everything you see. But you have to be able to listen to it, all views. Aristotle listened to Plato, and he said, well, okay, you got something to see here, but you're wrong over here. Aquinas said to Aristotle, great, you're one of the best so far, but you don't have the totality of the reality of truth. And then we who are, what, heirs to Aquinas, did he claim that he had the totality of the reality of truth? No. But he had a lot. So my suggestion is that take advantage of what you have here. Some teachers will be better for you, some not. They will challenge you, but you should keep an open mind and an open heart. And as I say, my friend philosophy will do for you what it did for me, and which I hope will continue to do good for me. I don't want to get a divorce from her in my old age, or leave her, or have her abandon me. But obviously, the faith is above all of this, you see. Faith and reason, Reason on itself ain't going to do the job, And that's why the modern philosophers were hated so much many years here at the university and by the students, because faith and reason were separated. All you needed is reason. You didn't need faith. But now we're back in the department itself, where students aren't afraid to listen to the moderns. But just because you listen to them doesn't mean you accept their views. No. But sometimes I'll say to them, gee, I'm glad I talked to you, because you helped me to become more convinced of my original convictions. I think you're wrong, but you helped me to become more convinced of my convictions. So those are the thoughts that I share with you tonight. I said I can go on for a long time, but I think I was just told I have about a half hour or so. So if you have any questions you want to throw at me, I'll try to answer them. If not, just try to resolve the questions yourself. Come to me some other time. But I have a copy of this here for each one of you. You can take it. And if you run out of wood out there, you might want to put this, commit it to the fire. So, anyone have any questions? Or okay, I just wanted to share these thoughts with you. I was just thinking about one more thing. That when I first started teaching philosophy at DePaul University in 1957, I knew philosophy better in Latin than I did in English. So I would be lecturing, in the middle of a lecture, I'd go off in Latin, and these kids looked at me, what's happening here? But after 2 or 3 years of teaching in English, I picked it up in English as well as Latin. But I still think that Latin has it over the English. Okay? What's this all about? Is this yours? Pardon? You did?